The Hill by Brendan Bozeman. Tommy got home from school to find the house empty. His two sisters must be out working the crops or something, he thought, and went over to the pump for a drink. The walk back from school was a long way, but was his favorite part of the day. The boys walked together, and sometimes there were fights, mostly wrestling and usually for fun. Once they saw a bear, and another time Kyle swore he saw a bobcat. That would have been trouble, a bobcat. One by one, they peeled off from the group as they got home, with Tommy living the farthest away. He went around back to check on the chickens. The coop looked a lot like his house, with bare wood clapboards on the walls and wood shingles for a roof. The house had been painted once, but now there were only a few white chips to show it. His father was always saving to buy a few cans of paint and a brush, but there was always something else that came first. Tommy went over to his favorite hen, Millie, and felt underneath her. There was an egg down there. She was in the habit of laying afternoon eggs, and she sat on it proud as a queen. She didn't object when Tommy took it, though, and he went down the line and found one more egg. He set those aside and decided he might as well give the coop a cleaning. It smelled like hell. First, he stroked Millie a few times and told her about the day. "We had a lot of problems because Calvin couldn't get his problems right," he said. "Calvin's stupid. Once Miss McCoy was asking him what date the 4th of July was, and he couldn't get it. I just wanted to say, 'Calvin, it's the 4th of July.' And then Nathan said it, and Calvin said, 'No, it ain't. It ain't even Christmas.' God, Millie, you do better than him in school." He asked Millie about her day, to which she clucked, and then he picked up the eggs and went back to the house, where he put them in a basket on the table. He heard the rumble of his dad's Model T pickup, wooden sides, coming up the road. It was old and looking pretty bad, but his dad was keeping it together. Tommy quickly went out the back door and up the hill to see what his sisters were doing. They were lying on the hill amongst some stalks of corn, talking to each other about God knows what. He sneaked up on them and then jumped out, screaming, "Tommy, you twit." He laughed. "You lazy boneses? Why are you home so early?" "Miss Mobsy let us out early because the boys were being bad. Here, lie down with us." He lay between them and listened to them talk, which meant he listened to their sounds. He had no idea what they were saying. It was all girl stuff and mostly about boys, so he paid no attention. He could vaguely hear his father moving around the house and then going into the shed, probably looking for something to fix the truck with. He used to be a carpenter, which went fine when the mines were still going and people had money. But now, a year after the big crash, there wasn't much for him to do. Now he could fix anything, even if it was plumbing or electrical or anything at all. He got the occasional job, mostly in town. But these days people tried to fix their own things, and if they couldn't fix them, they'd leave them alone. A leaky roof is nothing a bucket can't solve. As long as that truck kept running, he could keep doing odd jobs, so he treated it like a baby. Otherwise, the family would have to live by farming alone, and that's when they would really be poor. It was quiet for a while, and Tommy decided to go down to Calvin's house and see if he wanted to play. He went through the house to keep farther away from the shed, but it turned out that his father was asleep on the porch. Tommy took his shoes off, which he wouldn't need anyway, and padded down the steps. But as he passed, his father stirred. "Tommy." "Yes, Pa?" Tommy could see his father had that look in his eye. "Come with me." He took Tommy by the arm and flung him into the pickup. Then he started driving. "I just need you to help me with something." Tommy looked down at his feet. Too bad he had taken his shoes off. They drove for about 45 minutes, maybe longer. Even at 8 years old, Tommy could tell that this used up a lot of gas for a man who never had any money. They came to a forested area, somewhat flat, and they got out of the pickup. His dad got a hatchet out of the back and led Tommy into the woods. He found a fallen tree, a fir, good and straight and not too large, and he hacked off limbs methodically. He didn't finish this, but he said to Tommy, "Okay, now I want you to pull this to the road and I'll meet you there." He walked off toward the truck. "Myself?" Tommy said. "Yes, yourself. It's not far." Tommy strained at the log, rolling it left and right, and barely moved it an inch. "Pa, I can't move it," he called. "Wait there, Tommy. I know what we need." Tommy sat on the tree and watched as his father reached the truck. It was hard to see what he was doing. Then he heard the engine start, and the truck moved away, making a 3-point turn in the road and going back the way it came. Tommy ran toward the truck. It was long gone by the time he got to the road, and the road was silent but for a few bird calls. He went to the edge of the road and waited. Another pickup rolled past, but he didn't wave it down and it didn't stop. Kids walked around alone all the time in those days. He waited some more. After a while, as dusk came on, he was sure of what had happened. His father wasn't coming back. He walked back to the fallen tree and sat down on it, facing away from the road. He wanted to make sure no one would see him cry. How long he was there, he couldn't say. But somehow, out of the depths of his simple but bottomless despair, he decided he would have to find a way to survive the night. If it rained, he could go cold and never wake up. Fortunately, his father had cut enough boughs off the tree that Tommy was able to make a lean-to. He arranged pine needles so that the floor would be dry, and he found wider leaves from the bushes and saplings nearby to make a roof. It would not be waterproof, but it would protect a little against wind and rain. He curled up in it, although he knew it wouldn't be a long time before he fell asleep. Insects crawled on him, but he had slept outside before and knew how to ignore them. He wondered what the girls were doing and whether they would ask Pa about him. Probably not. He had that look he got when he had to take his back medicine, and they'd do well to steer clear of him. They might even sleep in the chicken coop, and let Ma deal with him. Tommy thought when you weighed it all up, he was probably better off in the woods. That is, as long as he could go home again. Panic gathered in his chest nonetheless. He didn't want to try to fend for himself. He didn't know how. Not really. He'd learned that a few other times when he had run away. He would last overnight at most, usually by sneaking into Calvin's house and sleeping with him and his brother in their bed. They wouldn't tell their parents he was there. But when he got hungry, he would realize his only place to get a meal was home. These thoughts made him cry again, because his father must have put him out here for a reason, and would probably chase him away. After it was dark for a while, he saw 3 men coming through the forest about 100 yards away. They had a dog and spoke loudly to each other, but he couldn't understand them. He did not wave at them or shout. Mountain men were bad news at any time, and he didn't want to deal with them alone. They passed by without noticing him. He was glad the dog didn't make a fuss over him, although it surely smelled him, and he remained under the tree. Listening to the sounds of the darkening forest, he gradually felt the urge to pee. Thinking about it made it worse. so after peering out between the leaves of his roof to make sure no one was around, he went out to relieve himself. As he did, he saw a light on the mountain. He had seen lights before from a distance, 3 or 4 at a time on the hillsides, and wondered what they were. From where he stood now, it looked like a fire, and after squinting at it for a while and judging it was not too far away, he decided to go have a look. The moon was full, so he could see pretty well, and he knew how to make sure he didn't get lost, or, if he did, how to backtrack. He bent twigs along the way and laid down sticks marking the direction at key places. That wasn't overkill. He'd gotten lost in the woods before and wasn't going to do it again. His feet, though bare, did not bother him. They were tough from walking and playing barefoot most of the time, and like all country boys, he knew to look down as he walked. As he got nearer, he heard the men's voices again, and he almost turned back, but his curiosity drove him on. He had to climb the side of a hill, and he wondered where the men's trail was, but there wasn't much use trying to find it in the dark. He made his way straight toward the fire and had to do some climbing up rocks in a couple places. After a while, he smelled smoke. As he got closer, he could see a fire and hear the sounds of talking. He crouched low and crept forward very slowly. He could make out that the men were doing something with tools, and that they had some large metal things on the fire. He found a good place on an outcropping, somewhat higher than the camp was, and observed. They weren't there hunting or trapping, and people didn't go out in the woods at night just for fun. He kept looking. Suddenly, the dog looked his way and came barking toward him. He tried to run, but the dog was there fast and bit his shirt. Tommy turned to get rid of the dog, crying out, and he saw a man was pointing a rifle his direction and shouting at Tommy to stop. The other 2 men were standing up, and one of them came toward Tommy. The dog didn't bite Tommy, so he was able to stand still. "Good doggy, I'm a friend," said Tommy, heaving with fright. The man with the rifle stopped pointing it, and the other man grabbed Tommy's arm and got the dog to let go of Tommy's shirt. "Who else is out here with you?" he said. The tone was not friendly. "No one. I'm alone." "What's a boy doing alone in the woods?" "My pa left me here." "Where is he now?" "I don't know. At home. He never come back." The man relented and loosened his grip on Tommy's arm. He looked around the woods, then back at Tommy. "What do you mean he left you?" "He took me out here in the truck and left me out here." Tommy started crying, to his humiliation, and the man took Tommy back to their camp. "Sit there," he said, pushing him toward a log. "And don't run, or you'll be talking to Gracie," he said, pointing at the dog. "Don't be fooled by her polite introduction. She bites." Tommy sat silently while the men went back to their work. He thought about running. They were so absorbed in what they were doing, he thought with 30 seconds he could disappear. But the dog was watching. Tommy listened to what they were saying, but still couldn't figure out what they were doing. They were fitting pipes and things together and putting things into big tanks. There was a shed with supplies. Finally, the man who had caught Tommy sat on the log next to him. He had a big white beard and bushy eyebrows. "Do you know what we're doing?" "No." "Good," he said. "Keep it that way. You don't tell no one what you've seen. We'll let you go later if you just stay put, and then you don't say nothing to no one, or Gracie here will find you and make lunch out of you. You hear?" "Yes, Pa. Yes, sir." The man laughed heartily. "Hey, Lewis, he wants to join the family. Says I'm his pa. Should we let him in?" One of them said, "No way, Pa, I ain't feeding him." Lewis had a big beard like his father's, but brown. The men all sat down, apparently waiting for the machinery to heat up. The older one pulled a clear bottle out of his jacket, took a drink from it, and handed it on. The third one, who had a black beard, held it out for Tommy and said, "Want some?" It looked like water, and Tommy nodded yes. As he tipped it into his mouth, he caught a smell like burning poison. But by then, it was too late. It burned his tongue and throat, and he coughed it out. The men burst into laughter, and the black-bearded one grabbed the bottle before it spilled. "Isn't that what you came here for?" he said. "We thought you was that murderer who just escaped from the penitentiary." Tommy's eyes were watering, and he could feel they were red. "I'm not a murderer." "All right, but if you're not the murderer, who are you?" "My name's Bo." "Tommy." "Tommy what?" "Tommy McNeil." Instantly he wondered if he should have given his real name. The men looked at one another. "And your father?" "Oh, William McNeil." Bo said, "Okay, Tommy McNeil, don't your daddy ever drink moonshine?" "No, he never drinks moonshine." "Never some bottle you're not supposed to touch? Something that makes him a little crazy?" "That's his back medicine." The three men laughed even harder. "No, it's shine." "You never seen one of these?" said the oldest, pointing at the machinery. "No, sir, but if this is moonshine, I bet it's a still." "That's right, boy, Tommy. We make moonshine up here." Then he grabbed Tommy by the throat. "But you don't tell no one about it, right?" Tommy, choking, nodded, and Bo released him. Then he said, "Wait here, Tommy, I'll be right back." He got up and went into the small shed, mixed some water in from another bottle, poured some sugar in, and shook it up. He brought it back and, handing it to Tommy, said, "Drink." Tommy drank. It burned his throat and he almost retched, but he got it down. A minute later, the man said, "Again." He had Tommy keep drinking every few minutes. He got up and tended to the still now and then. Pretty soon, Tommy's head was swimming. The men asked him questions and he could barely answer. He was confused about everything. They had him get up and try to walk straight. He wobbled around, flailing his arms like he was on a balance beam. The men laughed and laughed. They had him say Mary had a little lamb, and he slurred what words he could remember. He couldn't even count to 20. They finally let him sit on the ground, leaning dazed against one of the logs. The father came back to him after a while and said, "Tommy, I don't think I ever told you my name. It's Rand." "Rand McGurk." Tommy's mind suddenly became clearer. He knew that name. His father's father had been in a feud with the McGurks, and they were still enemies. "We'll be seeing your pa tomorrow." "Seeing?" said Tommy. "That's right. You just mind you don't say you saw us." "I won't. I swear it, I won't." That was a lie, although he wasn't sure he'd ever see his family again. "You best not. Now drink this." Tommy pleaded no, but Rand said this time it was water. He gulped it down, but almost immediately he walked a few steps away to throw up. It felt awful the way his stomach clenched, the way he couldn't keep his balance, the way the vomit burned his mouth and nose as it spurted out of both. He slid down to the ground in misery. Rand left the water next to him, and Tommy fell asleep. He woke up many times, taking water in between. At one point, just before dawn, he woke with the men putting jugs into packs, which they put on their backs. The father carried a glass bottle over and said, "This is more water. You'll need it. I suggest you take your time getting back." Next time, don't go snooping around other people's business." The group shuffled away. The fire was out, but still smoking. Tommy decided he'd better get back to his lean-to. It was very hard going. His muscles were weak, and he kept thinking his legs would give out on him. He stopped to drink the water frequently on the way down. He didn't know where he would get food. He started to cry again as he concluded that he would have to be a hobo for the rest of his life. He cut his foot on something, so he tied his shirt around it because he knew you couldn't leave a wound open or it would get infected, and then he'd lose his foot, and it wasn't even his first day alone. He was never so glad for having left trail markers. When he got back, he peed, lay down on the pine needles, and was asleep right away. When he awoke later that morning, Tommy felt like a dead cat. His entire body ached. He had a headache, he was thirsty, and he was starving. He wasn't sure where he was. In fact, it didn't even occur to him to wonder. He lay still for a long time with a vague feeling that there was something important he needed to do. The demand to pee again forced him to rouse, and he went to the forest a few feet. When he was finished, he saw that he still had water, and he drank it with gratitude. Not knowing what else to do, he walked toward the road. About halfway there, he realized he needed to warn his father about the McGurks. He noticed his shirt was still tied around his foot. He undid it and examined his foot, and since it was scabbed up, he put the shirt back on, blood and all, and picked his way toward the road. Even if he wasn't welcome, he had to warn his father. He started walking, sure he would be too late. But after about an hour, he heard the sound of an engine. It was going the wrong way, but he went out into the middle of the road to wave it down. It turned out to be his father, who stopped and said simply, "Get in." Tommy climbed up, and with two big pulls got the door open. "You're coming back home," was all his father said. Tommy started to think he shouldn't have been so scared about being abandoned. His father had thrown him out of the house before, albeit just down the front steps. Once he had even driven him 5 minutes down the road, but he was allowed back in the house without comment. Still, his father had seemed really serious this time. It had really felt final. His feelings were blank, partly because he didn't know what to think, and partly because the pain in his body squashed any emotion. But two thoughts formed that he knew corresponded to emotion, even if he didn't feel them. He was angry at his father, but also scared for him. With completely flat affect, he said, "The McGurks are coming to get you today." "The McGurks? What the hell gives you that idea?" "I saw them last night. They said never to tell you, but they're going to see you today." His father laughed. "I think I should show you something," he said. "But first you need to wash that shirt." When they got home, his mother burst into a frenzy of relief, checking Tommy for cuts and bruises and kissing his face over and over. She was worried about his foot and cleaned the scab with Moonshine. His father said to put socks and shoes on. "But it's not Sunday," said Tommy, "and it's too late to go to school." "It's to protect your foot. You're coming with me in a while." Tommy's sisters went out to the cornfield, and Tommy's mother made him a late breakfast. He lay down on the porch and waited for his father to do something. After an hour, he said, "Okay, Tommy, we're going." They got in the truck and drove the opposite direction from yesterday, toward town, but turned onto a dirt road before getting there. A sign along the road said, "McGurk." "But Pa," said Tommy, "that sign said McGurk." "Just wait." They reached the house, and the older one, Rand, came out. "Hi, Willie," he said. "Hi, Rand," said his father. "Where is it?" "Just right here." Next to the house was a pile of boxes with blankets over them. Louis and Bo came out to help William put them in the truck, 6 boxes. Tommy stayed in the truck, and Rand came over to the window, resting his hands casually on the door. "Hi, Tommy." "Hi." "Feel okay today?" "Yeah." Rand gave a high-pitched, airy giggle. Tommy could see his face get red. "The McGurks always get their revenge," he said. He patted Tommy's head, which made his hair feel like it was getting pulled out. Gracie jumped up on the door, standing on her hind legs, tail wagging. Tommy patted her head. Rand turned around as Tommy's father walked over to give him money. Tommy's jaw dropped when he saw a pile of $10 bills. He'd never seen so much money in his life. Then they drove away. So you know what that was, right, Tommy?" "Not really," said Tommy, rolling the window down so he could hear better. "I buy their moonshine. Tonight I'll take it up to a clearing in the hills, not far from where I left you yesterday. By the way, did you notice I cut enough limbs off for you to make a lean-to?" Tommy hadn't known why his father had done that, but he nodded. "I'll meet some people there who buy the shine from me and take it to the city. This is how I'm keeping food on the table." "You don't really do odd jobs?" "I still do them. It keeps the police off the scent." "I thought you said the McGurks were our real enemies." "That was in the past. They're okay. But you can't tell no one about this. Not your friends, not your teachers, no one. Got it?" "Yes, Pa." "Really got it?" "Because you're a little young to know all this. I'm trusting you. If anyone finds out about this, it's jail for me." "Okay." "Not okay. It definitely ain't okay if I go to jail. The whole family will starve, and it will be your fault." "Okay, I swear, I won't tell no one." When they got home, his mother was cooking lunch. The 3 of them ate together. Then his father said, "Hey, Tommy, come sit on the porch with me." They went outside. "You can come with me for some of these trips, Tommy. I've got one more today, but you can't come tonight. I'll be meeting some tough guys tonight. Tougher than 3 McGurk mountain men. When things go wrong with them, they go really wrong, and they won't want any kids who'll go around telling tales. You understand, right, Tommy? If they ever see you, or if you ever say anything about them..." Tommy drew a finger across his throat. "That's right. And then they'll come for me and Ma and Ellie and May too. And Millie." "I'll be careful." "All right. Just don't forget." "I swear I won't, Pa. I swear." "Now, tell me, how is school going?" "Well, Calvin's really dumb." "Is he?" "He couldn't say when the 4th of July was." His father shook his head. "Oh, that Calvin." Tommy smiled. He was glad when his dad had one of his nice days.